Hey guys, and welcome back to the second HellfireComms Disneython. I have Xgamer Richie with me here today, and we're about to go medieval on your arses. For indeed, today HellfireComms is taking a look at Disney's The Sword in the Stone.
Woo!
Indeed, indeed. Now, I'm sure you've got plenty of medieval trivia and such. So before we, spill the details, show off our hand, so to speak, and have nothing to talk about, let's just get right on into it. Everything you guys watching or listening will need to sync up. Our commentary to the movie can be found in the video description. So Richie and I are just going to get right on to it. In 3, 2, 1. Okay, Disney's The Sword in the Stone came out in December of 1963. Came out Christmas Day of 1963, actually.
Oh, wow. Then again, to be fair, in the UK, that's a very strange concept. Nothing comes out on Christmas Day here because pretty much nothing's open on Christmas Day. But obviously in America, I think it is much more common. I've heard of a lot of films that do get released on Christmas Day.
Yeah. Now, regardless of whether you follow, Arthurian lore and such, regardless of whether you've played Sonic and the Black Knight, most of us are familiar with the concept of the sword in the stone. You know, the weapon and, the concept of whoever pulls it out of said stone gets to be the King of England. So, I would imagine a lot of you would be very comfortable sitting down to watch this. It's not like, I don't know, Robin Hood, which is more based in Nottingham lore. You know, the sword in the stone and King Arthur is, UK related.
Yeah, and also, it's a narrative that is quite heavily ingrained in, well, particularly for the UK, it's very ingrained in our national culture. But also I think it is well known globally. It's kind of a strange one for me, because it's not actually from the original Arthurian literature. The whole sword and the stone thing, I don't know whether it initially appears in the book on which the Sword and Stone is based, or whether he found it from somewhere else. But I should point out, The Sword and the Stone, the film, is based on T.H. White's tetralogy, The Once and Future King, which was initially released in 1938, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and then the last part of it was released in 1941, or published in 1958, but written during earlier periods and all sorts of stuff.
Oh man, I'm going to have to turn this up a bit. I think this is one of my favourite underrated Disney songs.
Yeah.
Just a nice way to start the film, really.
I'm looking at this book and I'm just thinking, oh, medieval manuscripts.
Yeah, I bet you'd like to own the first edition of this if it existed, right?
Oh, definitely, but I mean, this doesn't physically exist because obviously, The Once and Future King is a novel, well, series of books, sort of novel, from first published in 1958, but written obviously in the 30s and 40s. Which wouldn't really have illuminated manuscript pages. For dealing with that sort of stuff, you'd be looking at medieval literature. I mean, I would love to have a copy of Le Roman de Rose, or Le Roman de la Rose, which is The Romance of the Rose. Because that's got some lovely pictures in it. Also, I mean, an illuminated version of Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales would be amazing as well.
So, mate, what's your connection to The Sword in the Stone? Did you watch it growing up, like with Robin Hood and so on?
I definitely did, because I certainly remember it from my childhood, but it's not one of the films that really captured my imagination at the time.
Fair enough, yeah.
Which I think I can explain in the fact of not a whole lot actually happened in the film. It's got a slower pace in general. It's much more city talky stuff going on in comparison to Robin Hood, which is very much more action heavy.
More frantic, yeah.
Yeah, this is a bit more. It's a bit slower in general. It's not a problem. It's still a decent film, but I think it just didn't quite capture my imagination as a child. I think I appreciate it maybe a little more now because I am so heavily invested in medieval literature.
Oh, who knows, maybe it influenced you to go down that academic path.
I wouldn't quite say that.
Mhm.
But largely because getting interested in medieval literature was because it was the first thing that came up on my university course.
Okay, fair enough, mate.
It was literally the first thing we dealt with, and I was just like, got to read all this stuff, and I was just like, actually, you know what, I really, really, really like this.
So here we have Disney's portrayal of Merlin the Wizard. Again, a very iconic figure in mythology and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Even in Harry Potter, he exists there. And, you can't really have a wizarding world without Merlin. He's one of the premier wizarding types.
Oh, exactly. Although it's hilarious that this is how we envision Merlin, but it's not really how he was initially created. Because the first real bit of Merlin that we get in literature is in Geoffrey of Monmouth's History of the Kings of Britain. It's basically the go-to for any sort of Arthurian literature. It's the beginning of what we know today. Merlin didn't really exist properly prior to that. So Geoffrey combined the existing stories of a person called Myrddin Wilt, who was a North Brythonic prophet and madman with no connection whatsoever to King Arthur. And he combined them with the tales of the Romano-British war leader Ambrosius Aurelianus, or something, to basically create a composite figure that he called Merlin Ambrosius, or in Welsh, Myrddin Emrys.
Like all these factions coming at me and I can't dodge a single one.
And because obviously Wales was quite important to the Merlin character, obviously he proved to be quite popular in Wales, did Merlin. And essentially the way that he's introduced is as a young man, and there's a story of him being brought to King Vortigern, who's, like, I think is technically the previous king to Uther, because Geoffrey of Monmouth created the character of Uther Pendragon.
Wait, not Arthur Pendragon?
Uther and Arthur.
Oh, what, is it that different characters or just different spellings?
Well, no, Uther is his father.
Okay.
At the start of this film, Uther Pendragon, the King of England, dies.
Okay, I never got that bit.
Yeah, and so, obviously, the Sword and the Stone, whoever pulls it, king, yada yada.
Yeah.
In Geoffrey's narrative, Arthur is obviously the son of Uther, and essentially, well, there is none of this Sword and the Stone stuff. The lineage is direct. Arthur grew up in the castle, everyone knows it, yada yada yada. So this is all slightly in terms of the Arthur narrative. But going back to Merlin, so there's a whole thing with a tower and why it can't be built, and Merlin has visions and stuff, and basically explains why this tower can't be built properly. And he prophesies the future of England, which essentially is prophesying Arthur's coming. And then there's only two further tales of the character in History of the Kings of Britain. There's the creation of Stonehenge.
Nice.
Where Merlin goes to, I think it's Northern Ireland somewhere, and via a system of pulleys and ropes manages to get all of these giant rocks to England. To build Stonehenge, and in the second, Merlin's magic enables Uther Pendragon to enter into the castle of Tintagel in disguise and father his son with his enemy's wife Igraine.
Okay.
But then Merlin essentially disappears from the narrative, so he has no link to Arthur outside of that. He never tutors him. There's nothing. It's only in later adaptations of the Arthur legend that Merlin became involved in Arthur's tutelage.
Basically, yeah.
It's a very long way of going about explaining it, but that's the bare bones of the situation.
Because, like, nowadays, you ever look up Arthurian stuff, Merlin's always there, at his side, the ever-faithful mentor.
Indeed, when that's, at least in the original stuff, not the case. Obviously, it's the case now because stories grow. As time passes, certain things get added, certain things get taken away. they're always a bit of a hodgepodge when you get centuries later. But that can be quite interesting as well.
Any entries on a cartoon talking owl that you've come across in researching the film?
No, there is nothing to do with the talking owl in Arthurian literature. As far as I'm aware, anyway.
Alright, let's get some voice acting trivia up in this bitch. There are actually 3 voice actors playing the part of Arthur, also known as Wart. You have Ricky Sorensen, Richard Riverman, and Robert Riverman, so 2 brothers there, I guess, because you will notice his voice changes throughout the film. And also, the 3 voices have American accents, sharply contrasting with the English setting and the accents spoken by most of the other characters in the film. So that's +1 on, Robin Hood, which had a lot of American accents.
Yes.
So...
The whole thing with the 3 different voice actors for Arthur is, so they originally cast Ricky Sorensen as Arthur, but midway through recording all of the audio, he started to go through puberty, so his voice broke, and obviously they couldn't really use him anymore. So the director of the film, at least I think it's the director, yes, Wolfgang Reitherman, enlisted the help of his sons to finish the job.
what you got, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Disney do that quite a lot. They do like getting their kids involved in the productions, because I know for a fact that in Frozen, which obviously we will be getting to eventually, / will have already dealt with by this point.
Getting to eventually, don't worry.
Yes. The singing voices of young Anna are Kristen Anderson Lopez's daughter, and the director's daughter, I can't remember her name at the minute.
It doesn't matter, it's fun.
I feel it's something like Jennifer Lee, that's it. So their daughters in the film. So Disney like including their kids, it's great.
Now, if you like magical antics, you have come to the right film, my friend. Look at this. The sugar pot's pouring sugar by itself.
I know, and this is all before Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, you didn't tell it to stop, Merlin.
I know, all that sugar.
Oh, there's tea in my sugar. Jesus.
Now, Carl Swenson is the voice of Merlin.
Does a great job, in my opinion.
Does an amazing job. But there's actually an interesting thing with him, because I think originally he was cast as being Archimedes, which is the owl.
I can see that, but I think I prefer him more in the Merlin role.
Yeah, I mean, basically, director Wolfgang Reitherman estimated that about 70 actors read for the part of Merlin, but none evidenced that note of eccentricity that they were seeking. They wanted Merlin to be eccentric, but not hokey.
Right.
Obviously, then they had Carl Swenson, who was cast for Archimedes, but they decided to cast him instead as Merlin. And I think that was probably one of the best decisions they made.
Yep. I believe Jeff Bennett plays Merlin in Disney stuff nowadays.
Yes, he does. And then we have Archimedes, who is voiced by Junius Matthews, who was best known as being the original voice of Rabbit in the Winnie the Pooh franchise from 1966 to 1977.
Keep a lookout for a commentary on the May Adventures of Winnie the Pooh later in the Disney fun. Don't worry, I'm looking at the movie order to make sure which order these commentaries come in.
Yeah, because I'm not looking at that at all. I'm just going all over Wikipedia. And this song.
I'd never argue the point that the Sword and the Stone soundtrack is in the top 10 of Disney film soundtracks, but the songs are memorable, so if nothing else, you're going to have a good time watching the film.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's quite a few of the Sherman Brothers soundtracks, because this is one of the films that the Sherman Brothers did for Disney. Obviously, Mary Poppins, Jungle Book, Aristocats, Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Nice.
So they have been majorly involved in the early era of Disney. And, I think it's only Richard Sherman who's still alive.
Oh.
Yes, Robert Sherman died and Richard Sherman's still alive, and he's done some amazing stuff in the past few years. He's done... It's just fascinating to hear him speak about his work and it's always lovely to see how emotional he gets when talking about his brother and Walt. I mean, particularly with Saving Mr. Banks.
I still need to see that.
Yes, you do, because he was quite involved in the production of that film. Because obviously it's telling he's basically the only living person that was really heavily involved in that entire process.
Yeah, it gives it a personal touch.
Yeah. But I mean, there's one story that he tells of Feed the Birds, where that was like that was the song where, like, Walt Disney's favourite song ever.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was the song that made them think, actually, everything's going to be okay. And Richard Sherman told the story of he was playing the song at Disneyland, like, absolutely clear sky. He played the song, and I think when he finished, or partway through singing it, a single pigeon came out of the clear blue sky, landed on the piano, and then flew away.
If there was ever such a thing as fate, that's an example of it, I think.
Yes. So, it's lovely.
Just to go over to the animation side of things for a minute, I would also, like, not argue the point that the backgrounds of The Sword and the Stone are, like, top tier, like, especially not Sleeping Beauty level, but it's still pretty to look at, even if it is, like, not quite stellar early era Disney stuff. It's just a very cozy movie overall, and I know that's a cop-out explanation for when you can't really, put into words what you're trying to say, but, sometimes you just have to speak from the heart, as it were.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is that at the end of the day, this is a 60s, 70s era Disney film, and none of them are quite so spectacular visually, I suppose. I mean, people will probably crucify me slightly because The Jungle Book does fall into that category.
Well, Jungle Book's fine. I wouldn't put it in my top 10 per se.
Yeah. So it's this era of Disney where things still look decent, but you can tell that they're slightly cheaper than previous Disney and later Disney.
Yeah, do me a favour, mate. Bring up a list of the Disney movies that were released in the 60s and 70s era, please.
You're gonna have to bear with me a second.
Well, I'll do the commentary, that's what I'm here for. Oh man, that poor wolf, all he wanted was a meal, and now he's gonna die in the forest, which is probably why we never see him again. Medieval castles, that's my aesthetic right there.
Oh, hell yes. Right, so, in the 60s, in terms of animated films, we had 101 Dalmatians,
Yeah.
The Sword and the Stone,
Yes.
and The Jungle Book.
Pretty good.
So that's the 60s. Obviously, in the middle of that, you have Mary Poppins.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm like angling towards more animated stuff. The question to follow would have been, what's like your top 3 from that era?
Oh, God, well,
Well, you can just go down the list and tell me them instead of reading them all off.
Well, it'd probably be Robin Hood, Aristocats, and Sword and the Stone.
Okay, fair enough. I would agree with Robin Hood and Sword and the Stone. It's our heritage. If nothing else, they're interesting to watch, cozy to experience. I liked Aristocats back in the day, but I very much doubt you'll see it in the 3rd Disneython, maybe the 4th, because it didn't hold up very well, I'll tell you that now.
No, it doesn't, really, but, It's a film from my childhood, you end up getting quite nostalgic about these things, so... Now, you know that whole sequence that we had with the wolf?
Uh-huh.
Part of me wonders whether that was included as a slight jab at the other film that might have entered production instead of Sword and the Stone?
I'm trying to think. I'm racking my brains here.
Essentially what happened was that once the work on 101 Dalmatians was completed in 1960, there were 2 projects in development. One was Sword and the Stone, and the other was a film called Chanticleer. Now, I believe that I have actually mentioned Chanticleer in our Robin Hood commentary.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if I have, but either way, it's involved in that. And Chanticleer was going to be a story based on the famous Reynard, well, the Roman de Reynard.
Oh, the fox.
The fox, yes. Because originally they were going to do a film about the fox, but then they realised he's not really the nicest of characters, so they went and focused on the rooster instead, because the rooster's called Chanticleer. So they, Anderson, Davies, Miltcahn and director Wolfgang Reitherman spent months preparing elaborate storyboards for the film, but following a silent response, following a story reel presentation, and a voice from the back of the room saying, "You can't make a personality out of a chicken," basically when it came to time to approve one of the two projects, Walt Disney replied to Anderson's pitch, this being Ken Anderson, with just one word: shit.
Wow.
Yep. Meanwhile, for work on the Sword and Stone was mostly done by veteran story artist Bill Peet, the person who had said, "You can't make a personality out of a chicken." And basically, after Disney had been to see the 1960s Broadway production of Camelot, he approved Sword and Stone. Obviously, so Milt Kahl was apparently furious with Bill for not pushing Chanticleer after all the work that had been put into it. And Pete, I think, recalled how humiliated they were to accept defeat and give in to the Sword and the Stone. I don't know quite what this sentence is saying. It doesn't make sense. Oh well.
Therefore, it is not a sentence. Good day. Alright, let's go up to Gryffindor Tower over here.
Are you sure it's Gryffindor Tower and not Rapunzel's Tower or Slytherin Tower? Because it's kind of a little bit broken. Slytherin always got
there you reveal how much of a fair weather Harry Potter fan you are. Because if you know your Harry Potter lore, you know that the Slytherin common room is in, I think it's beneath the lake.
Oh, that is true, isn't it? Yeah. No, I was just about to say because it's the one that's always leaking.
Well, there's a green light in there to indicate that it is under the lake. Speaking of things that are leaking, though, oh boy, best room in the house or what? They did water so amazingly well in these, old Disney movies, I think. We'll talk about this more in the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, but,
yeah.
I don't know, it's just pleasant to look at.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's something that is always really fascinating, is to see natural things done in a relatively unnatural medium. Because, I mean, even though obviously hand-drawn animation is quite organic, there is obviously, it's man-made, it's all to do with man's influence on paper, well, film cells, because obviously that was what it would have been on.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it's a very complex thing, and they are rendering something that is insanely complex to achieve. Even now, there are, you have all these computer simulations, and even now they sometimes don't always get it quite on point in terms of water or rain or what have you. And, even here, even though it's obviously not water, it's not perfect, but it gets the effect across superbly well.
Very much. Can you tell that we really adore Disney films, guys? Richie just went on, a rant about water. That's how prepared we are. My Archimedes is just getting all the abuse here.
Archimedes just gets all the abuse throughout the entire film, from what I remember.
Then again, I'm not even sure if he pays rent, so take that how you will.
I don't think he does. I think he just sort of hangs around and has a hoot.
Mm-hmm. That's a me-tier joke. Is this a character from Arthurian lore?
I don't know. So, from what I can gather, this is meant to be Sir Pellinor.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know whether he has any actual appearance in Arthurian literature.
Like a legendary counterpart or something.
Yes, I mean, Sir Ector, which is Arthur's foster father here, he does appear in some bits and bobs. Obviously he appears in The Once and Future King. that's why he's here. But apparently he does appear in the works of Robert de Boron and the Lancelot Grail cycle, as well as other later adaptations, such as the post-Vulgate cycle and Thomas Mallory's Le Morte d'Arthur. So we're talking 15th century, 16th century there, really, in terms of Arthurian literature.
So yeah, we have the concept for, well, the driving force for the rest of the movie. There's going to be a tournament. Whoever wins gets the crown, gets to become king of all England. And I imagine they eventually got tired of, bickering and warring, so they thought, fuck the sword, we'll just do it our way. Job's a good one.
And another fun Arthurian fact that I feel the need to point out is that in this film, and The Once and Future King, the other, Arthur's foster brother is Kay. And Sir Kay is actually one of the earliest characters to ever be associated with Arthur.
Huh.
In the... I think there's a carving on an archway somewhere. I can't remember where it is. I can't remember what the story involved with it is. It comes before Geoffrey of Monmouth, I think.
Well, that's going back a ways then, so I don't really blame you for not being able to remember it.
Yeah, and basically it's got Arthur, it's got Guinevere, I think it's got Gawain, and it's also got Kay. Basically, Kay is one of the first Knights of the Round Table, and he is Sir Ector's son, and, at least in this iteration, his King Arthur's foster brother. But what ended up happening to Kay, and it's actually quite fitting here, is that he's known for his acidic tongue and bullying, boorish behaviour.
Yeah, he's a very Gaston-like figure in this movie, is Kay.
Yeah. I think in earlier versions, Sir Kay was one of Arthur's premier warriors, and along with Sir Bedivere, one of the earliest characters associated with Arthur, but as you get later on, Sir Kay becomes a dick. I mean, even in the romances of Chrétien de Troyes, I believe, you get Kay being an absolute dick to people, and just insulting everyone left, right and centre.
Explain to me the squire and page system, if you can, please, mate.
Why do you do these things to me, Tom?
Because it gives you a chance to talk, and it means I get to edit quicker. Don't mind me, I'll just be looking at pretty water while you look stuff up.
So, a squire was the shield or armour-bearer of a knight. At times, squires acted as a knight's errand runner. Use of the term evolved over time, and squires were essentially knights' apprentices. Later on, you got, village leaders or lord of the manor being called a squire, and even later, you get the term being applied to key public figures such as justices of the peace or members of parliament. In contemporary American usage, it's the title given to justices of peace and similar local dignitaries.
And if you can't swallow that, just think of it like a Jedi Master and a Padawan, okay?
Yeah.
Well, a Jedi Knight and a Padawan, but I guess a Master can teach too.
Yeah, so squire is a shortened version of the word esquire, which should sound slightly more familiar to
Why did I never put that
ears.
together before? Huh.
It's because we don't really use esquire a whole lot these days either, but it's one that's probably slightly more... It's used more in contemporary usage than squire would be. What was the other term you wanted? Was it page?
I think so, yeah, like page boy or something.
Yeah, you have to give me another second on that one.
Alright, I'll just explain what's going on here then. Basically, while Wart over here, Arthur, to use his real name, is getting tutored, in the ways of being a squire and so on, Merlin's training him on the side in the ways of magic, and I guess trying to, build up his courage to be the once and future king, and so on. So, throughout, I would say, the next half an hour or so, we're going to see plenty of magical antics as Merlin continues to warp a young boy's mind by transforming him into various bits and bobs. In this case, he is going to transform into a fish.
Uh-huh. Now, you're slightly off in him saying that Merlin's teaching Arthur about magic, and what he's teaching him via magic is how to be a good king.
Well, I was 95% right. You switched the context and I was 100% right, so there you go.
So I found out about Page. So Page is traditionally a young male servant, but may also have been used for a messenger at the service of a nobleman or an apprentice knight.
Okay.
Don't really know where the term originally comes from, but it may come from either the Latin pagus or pagus, which means servant, which is possibly linked to peasant, or an earlier Greek word, which is, I believe, pais, which is child.
Okay.
Obviously, they've since then become a symbolic attendant during wedding ceremonies, but in medieval times, they just attended knights. I believe pages tended to be up until about the age of 7 or so, or at least after 7 they went to a castle to be a page, and they served as a page for about 7 years, and then I think they became a squire. I think that was the progression.
Okay, so at level 16 a page evolves into a squire then.
Well, more level 14 or 15.
I don't know why I'm insisting on dumbing these things down. Maybe it's just so I can understand it, not the audience.
But yes, obviously, kids got sent away at 7 to become pages, and then when they turned 14, 15, they became squires, and then eventually, probably, they became knights as well if they desperately wanted to.
Fuck yeah.
So, lovely little bit of hierarchy there for you.
How did you find these sections of the films? You know, the magical larks, the fantastical fuckabout sections?
Well, I mean, this bit is probably the bit that's the most slow. Like, because nothing's happening, really. It's just a little ditty about what makes the world goes round.
Well, you gotta get some perspective, otherwise how are you gonna be a good king?
Well, it's very true, and also you've got to know the world from all the different perspectives to understand things.
Oh, Merlin, what are you like?
Also, sword in the lake. Sword, well, it's more remote, but sword in the water.
Some watery bin will throw it out eventually, don't worry about it. I'm just enjoying it. Don't come here expecting quality commentary during the magical fuckabout sections.
I know, it's just one of those things where you just sit and you just sort of smile.
Okay, he's forgotten the lyrics, so we're just getting a bit of ye medieval scat here.
I mean, that would make sense considering, Higgis, Figdus, Miglus, Mum, Prestidigitonium, which obviously we heard earlier.
Sorry, it took my brain a second to realise what you were saying. That's a big old catfish.
Uh-huh.
I've heard Bear Child singing in Disney films before.
Yeah, he's not great, is he?
I feel really bad saying that, because I can't sing a lick either.
I mean, the thing is that, so, certain child actors can sing amazingly, others not so much.
Yeah.
I mean, a prime example would be Knight's Journey of Dreams. Because you've got one kid who could sing actually quite well, and another one who wasn't quite so good.
Ooh, that is a mean-looking barracuda. Now, obviously, I don't know what the fishy situation was back in medieval times, but are barracudas a thing in the United Kingdom?
Give me a second.
The things you make me sauce, Tom.
I know! It's like, Jesus, wet man. I don't know whether it's a barracuda or whether it's a pike.
A pike would probably be more likely.
I think a pike would be much more common.
Or pikely, if you will.
Yeah, because they live in Eurasia, whereas I think barracudas are more ocean fishes. I could be wrong on that fact, They are found near the top of water and near coral reefs and seagrasses. So yes, they're an ocean fish, whereas a pike is more of a river fish.
Well, a moat counts as a river, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, doesn't count as a river because it's not going anywhere.
It's a big old pond surrounding a castle.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's probably more accurate. Although even then, it's a moat. That is literally the only way of describing it, because it's not a pond, because I think ponds tend to be more clumped together, as are lakes.
Oh, Jesus. What does this have to do with becoming a king, Merlin? Am I learning to take down enemies bigger than myself right now?
Yes.
Is it a metaphor for fighting dragons?
Maybe. I mean, to be fair, probably is, yeah, considering there is that whole thing of Arthur killing a dragon, which isn't really in any sort of Arthurian literature.
Set the record straight for me, Richie. Did he ever go to Avalon?
Right. So, in pretty much all of the stories, after Arthur is killed, or at least fatally wounded at his final battle, he leaves to go to Avalon.
Right.
Depending on the version of the story you're looking at, I think in Geoffrey of Monmouth's History of the Kings of Britain, it just says that he went to Avalon and was never seen again, or something to that effect. As you start to go later, if you go, I think it's Wace and then Lackerman, you get extra stuff. So you get, I think, Wace or Was or whatever, saying he went and the British people know that he'll come again someday.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Lackerman you get him going to Avalon to see a fairy, and one day the British and people know that they will see him again because he will be the once and future king, yada yada yada. So in pretty much all of the narratives, he goes to Avalon, but we don't know where Avalon was, what it was, what he was meant to do there, whether he was just going there to die, or whether he was going there to get healed so that he could come back. It's a difficult one, but basically Arthur's story ends with him leaving for Avalon.
Well, if you watch another Disney thing, Gargoyles, they do a fairly interesting adaptation of the Arthur lore, and then they bring in stuff like the Fair Folk. Who is their leader? Hang on, I'm running through it in my mind. I know the Queen is Titania. I forget her husband's name.
Oberon?
There you go.
This is where Shakespeare comes in handy.
Yeah, that's from A Midsummer Night's Dream, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool. But yeah, watch the Gargoyles Avalon arc. It's pretty sick. Plus, you have David Warner as an evil archmage. You can't go wrong. I was a fish. You've got to believe me. God, his hand is as big as Arthur's head. Arthur spends a lot of time running away, and especially downstairs in this movie.
Well, yeah, it's because he's the wart. He's just basically buggered by everybody.
I think we've changed voice actors at this point.
I think we've changed voice actors at least 2 times already. It's impossible to tell, like, it keeps changing. It's just like, okay.
Yeah, it needs like a fancy subtitle or a transition effect on screen. You are now watching blah 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 blah.
Do you think we should do a little bit more voice actor trivia, seeing as we are literally just cleaning pots at this point in time?
Go for it, mate. We discussed bodies of water earlier. May as well bring down another notch.
Sebastian Cabot, or Cabot, voices Sir Ector. He's most well known for being the narrator of this film and Sir Ector. He is also most well known for being the voice of Bagheera in The Jungle Book.
Nice.
And he is the narrator for, I think, the Winnie the Pooh TV series, along with Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, Winnie the Pooh and Ticket 2, and The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
There you go. I thought that name sounded familiar, actually.
Yes, he's also remembered as the Gentleman's Gentleman Giles French in CBS TV sitcom Family Affair.
Nice.
As well as being Wazir in the film Kismet, and Dr. Carl Hyatt in a TV series called Checkmate.
Oh, this is one of my favourite set pieces in the movie, if you can even call it that. Like, so mundane, yet so fascinating at the same time.
I mean, yeah, I would assume that perhaps this had some influence on Fantasia.
Yes, actually, with the broomsticks and
with
whatnot.
With the brooms, yeah.
I think we'll have to do that in the third Disneython, if there ever is one, Fantasia.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting one to do. Maybe a little bit hard to commentate over, since it is literally just an hour or so of classical music. But
we've done avant-garde stuff before. Nothing's coming to mind right now, but I'm sure it's there.
The other voice actor that we can really properly talk about right now is the guy who voices Sir Kay, or Kay, and that is Norman Alden. He first appeared on TV in the 20th Century Fox Hour in 1957, and apparently he had a notable role in I Never Promised You a Rose Garden.
Never heard of it.
Neither have I. I'm currently just looking at his filmography to see if there is anything that we'd recognise.
Meanwhile, Merlin is teaching Arthur about the blasphemous concept of gravity. Better not let that one get out to the masses, otherwise I think they'll be burned at the stake.
So he is the Great Gregory, in the Great Bank Robbery, and the one that probably we'd recognise him from is being Kranix in the Transformers the movie. He's also Lou in Back to the Future.
Okay. I imagine Helldragon will know about the Transformers credit.
Yeah, but that is it. And can he see anything else?
It's okay, mate. Don't worry about it.
I mean, unless we have Sir Pellinor, who I think was the guy who turned up, but I might be wrong, and either way, there's a character called Sir Pellinor, and he's voiced by Alan Napier, who is best known for portraying Alfred Pennyworth in the 1960s live-action Batman TV series.
Nice. 60s Batman, love it. They made I think it's like a direct-to-DVD movie, starring Adam West and Burt Ward and such recently. Oh, poor Wart.
I know, getting assaulted by a squirrel that fancies the hell out of him.
There's no laws in the animal kingdom.
And fun fact, the little girl squirrel is voiced by Ginny Tyler, who in 2006 was inducted into the Disney Legends program.
What else has she done?
Right, I'm seeing if I can find out who the characters that she voices. But so she sang for the voices of several barnyard animals in the Jolly Holiday sequence of Mary Poppins.
Mm-hmm.
She is in Son of Flubber, Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, Dr. Dolittle, a few other things. She did some audio recordings for Bambi, Babes in Toyland, Lady and the Tramp, and then she did some TV things. So she was in the new Fantastic Four from 1978.
Okay, I think it's safe to say she's done a lot and has earned that Legend Award.
Yes.
So yeah, this section is all about puberty, essentially.
Yeah, and also about sex, because obviously we needed to have the sex talk in a Disney film.
Well, a smart and wise king needs to know about the birds and the bees. It's just not done otherwise. Oh, it's the wolf! He comes back! I forgot about that.
I forgot he came back as well. I've just remembered. So remember when I was talking about Chanticleer and Reynard and stuff,
Uh-huh.
and I think I was saying in relation to the wolf. Basically, in the Roman de Reynard, they're like Reynard's big adversary, so to speak, is a wolf called, I think it's Isigrem or something along those lines.
Uh-huh.
So obviously, them constantly beating up the wolf is sort of potentially either little middle finger or little homage to Reynard. I suspect that might be completely false as an assumption, but it'd be nice to think that that was a little reference.
Oh, Merlin, you just sitting there doing nothing is about to come back and bite you in the arse, mate. This is what we call karma.
Also, I like how he's essentially treating the acorn like a basketball.
Yeah, that's less of a squirrel and more of a, like, really small beaver.
I mean, to be fair, she sort of looks like Gopher.
Little bit, little bit. Yeah, not so fun when it's done to you, is it, asshole? Yeah, I was just yoking it up earlier. This red-headed squirrel is assaulting my ward, as it were. Oh, I can see why they picked him for the role of Merlin. He's just having a blast.
Well, of course. I mean, to be fair, it's a really great role. And I think I can see why they had such a challenge in finding just the right voice actor to get it right. Because you can either go too eccentric, or you're going to be not eccentric enough.
Mm-hmm.
And just getting the right balance is just insanely difficult.
Just fun to see him get, like, slowly and slowly more annoyed. At least you got a young one. Oh man, he makes that yell like 50 times during the course of the movie. Well, this is going to be a very depressing adaptation of The Once and Future King.
No, Arthur's going to get saved by a squirrel.
A stalker.
Yeah.
A stalker squirrel. Oh, too bad you can't defy gravity like me.
I mean, she literally did just defy gravity there, because, like, while you could theoretically run back along and jump off, momentum would probably be a little bit messy in that. Also, I have to say, I really like the fact that they are red squirrels. Apart from Merlin, who's a grey squirrel.
He's blue to indicate that he is Merlin, but yeah, you could make the argument that he's grey.
Well, yeah, and actually that's a really nice touch, because obviously before... I don't know exactly when the grey squirrel entered our ecosystem, but before then, we just had red squirrels. And then when they brought them over from America, the grey squirrel ended up taking over.
Man, there was a vicious gang war and everything.
Indeed. And, yeah, so it's a nice touch that all of the English natives, shall we say, to this forest are red squirrels, but then you've got Merlin, who is the immigrant into this situation, is the grey one.
Oh, fine job, Wart, fine job. Then again, it was Merlin who turned him into a squirrel in the first place. Alright, Ward, let's go back to the plot now. See? That's what you get when you don't listen, Kay. Oh, it's gotta be that Merlin fucker again. Ever since he came to lodge here, it's been nothing but moving teacups and friggin' floating, like, horse apparatus.
Now, apparently, Sir Ector's scullery maid is voiced by Barbara Jo Allen. Not sure whether that is entirely true, because it does say citation needed on here, but we'll go with it. And she's done quite a lot of old films, like quite a lot of old films, but she was also in Sleeping Beauty, actually.
Nice.
And she voiced Fauna.
Oh, okay, one of the Three Good Fairies. That is a star in Roland.
Yeah. But The Sword and the Stone, I believe, was actually her last role that she had in a film before she retired.
Okay, well that's a happy ending.
I would assume it was her last film before she retired, largely because she didn't pass away until 1974, and obviously the film came out in 1963. So there's quite a gap between there, but there's no films on all short things on here later than 1963.
Oh, I'm ever so fat. Oh, antics. Can we get back to the plot, please?
we can never get back to the plot. There is, as I may have mentioned at the start of the film, there is very little plot actually in the film.
Yeah. Start to rethink that Fantasia com.
Yeah. Like, it's not a huge problem. But I think it does go does go far as to explain why the film received mixed reviews from critics.
Yeah.
I think the general reception was that it had too much humour in it, and it had a thin narrative. And I think the consensus, as according to Wikipedia here, is a decent take on the legend of King Arthur. The Sword and Stone suffers from relatively indifferent animation, but its characters are still memorable and appealing.
Yeah, well, you've got Wart, you've got Merlin, you've got Ector and Kay.
You've got Archimedes.
Oh yeah, can't forget the talking owl. I will say I think the film suffers from the same problem Meet the Robinsons had, where the start is strong, the ending is strong. It's the middle where things start to taper off.
Yes, definitely. It's the second act problem.
Because, all the life lesson aspects are interesting, but they're kind of smothered in twee songs and just animation where stuff just happens.
Yeah, it's not great.
That's a very limp-wristed way of describing a scene where nothing happens by saying it happens, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, also, Merlin, don't go getting all fairy godmother on his ear, mate.
That's totally the fairy godmother.
Well, I mean, it is, because sparkling into existence, sitting down, looking concerned.
Yeah. Which one came out first?
Cinderella.
Okay.
Because Cinderella was the 50s.
Okay. Well, you didn't need to give me that tone, mate. I'm not dumb.
No, sorry, it's just I had a moment where I was just like, oh, crap. When did it come out? Oh no! Yeah, so Cinderella came out in 1950. And obviously this is 1963. So perhaps they were slightly inspired.
The old legend of the giant bowl of water and the dragon in the clouds below.
Yeah. The flat world and then the globe, which would really probably blow Arthur's mind. Although then again, to be fair, I can't remember where I heard it, I can't remember where I've seen it, but I think in the medieval period they had a concept of the world being round. They didn't think it was flat. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure they weren't that dim. They were actually, in some ways, more intelligent than we are today, because of their education system. Those that did get educated were, like, really stupidly, insanely intelligent. but the rest of the people probably weren't quite so smart.
This is gonna end well, leaving the bird in charge of the future king's, tutelage.
Well, he's called Archimedes. He should be absolutely fine.
Why does he talk exactly? What branch of magic did Merlin conjure up to give himself a magical talking companion?
Because it'd be really boring if he just lived alone.
I suppose.
I don't know why they decided to go with calling the owl Archimedes, but I feel the need to point out that Archimedes was an ancient Greek mathematician, physicist, engineer, inventor, and astronomer.
Mm-hmm.
And although we don't really know much about him, he was one of the leading scientists in classical antiquity.
Did Archimedes write the letters on the top, or did Merlin begrudgingly come in and do some cursive?
I don't know. I mean, it'd be nice to think that Archimedes could do that, don't you think? Although it's very odd that Archimedes, the mathematician, is teaching writing.
Yeah.
Considering he is apparently the greatest mathematician of antiquity and one of the greatest of all time. Because he anticipated modern calculus and analysis.
Okay. You don't expect these facts when you come into a Disney commentary of Sword in the Stone, but you're getting them anyway.
Well, of course. You're coming into a Disney commentary featuring yours truly. You're going to get really random facts that you're never going to need to know, nor will you probably ever want to know.
Oh, Merlin. Well, there goes the prototype.
Dramatic irony. Because obviously we all know, yes, man will fly.
Thank you, Richie, that is the joke. I just love how he's doubling over with giggles. Oh, man will never fly. Birds will forever rule the realms of the sky.
And now we kill them in jet engines.
Yeah, watch out for aeroplanes, asshole.
It's also why we learned no capes.
Yep. Oh, here comes another lesson, unasked for.
Aww, he's so cute as a bird.
What type of bird is he, Richie?
I don't know what bleeding type of bird he is.
I think he's meant to be a sparrow.
I think that's probably... Well, it says here a sparrow, so let's go with that.
Is he bird-splaining right now?
He is bird-splaining.
I know what my wings are made of, okay. I can do the explaining here. Really? Hadn't noticed. Actually,
Yeah.
air passes under your wings, which creates lift and so on.
Yeah, it's a very scientific process, but one that looks effortless because it's done by instinct.
Yeah, and while you're not looking, birds are just showing off doing gymnastics in the air and shit, so it looks cool.
Yeah, and we all look up and just go, oh, I wish I could fly.
Better strap on my jetpack or get into a giant metal bird and that'll show those fuckers, alright? I would say this is probably the most entertaining of the transformation lesson sections.
Yes, particularly because it leads us into the kind of major bit of conflict, I suppose, that the film has. Because it also sort of introduces a villain. A temporary villain / rival.
Antagonist, I think, would be the better descriptive.
Yeah. There's not really any true villain in this film, which I don't think did it many favours.
I suppose they could have gone for a slightly, older Arthur, who was I don't know, already established to have Merlin as his mentor, and they like go through some of the Arthurian myths and whatnot?
Yeah, I suppose they could have done. I mean, the thing is that I think when Disney got the rights, they were initially for a different part of the story.
Oh,
Yeah, so Walt Disney initially purchased the film rights to The Ill-Made Knight, which is the third book in The Once and Future King, which was released in 1940, mainly dealing with Lancelot, actually.
okay.
But then he eventually produced The Sword and the Stone, which is the first book in the tetralogy, which is kind of odd. So there was the potential that they were going to go with a slightly more typical Arthurian narrative, but then they went with this, which is fine. It's probably much more in keeping with Disney as a whole, especially during this era. They'd probably be able to do a more typical Arthurian thing nowadays and get away with it, because Disney's gotten more action-heavy, shall we say, as of late.
Now, is Madam Meg, is it?
Mim. Mad Madam Mim.
There you go. I knew it started with M. Is Mim based on any character from Arthurian lore?
I don't think she really is. I mean, there are obviously villainous characters or villainous witches in Arthurian legend, but then again, they're not always necessarily villainous, because so you have Nimue, the Lady of the Lake, who's obviously a powerful lady of magic, and then you have Morgana / Morgan / Morgause / she's got various other names, and she's magical. She's generally the one who's mostly seen as being evil.
What relation is she to Arthur exactly?
So Morgan is, I think, his sort of stepsister.
Okay, is she related to Morgan Le Fay?
She is Morgan Le Fay.
Okay.
So it's like Morgan Le Fay, Morgan, Morgaine, Morgana, Morgant, Morg, varies many names. But she's sort of his sister, or Uther's water, like the half brother and half sister.
Mm-hmm.
But it's complicated.
Wasn't there a plot between, like, her and her boyfriend to strike down Arthur and take the crown?
Potentially, there are many stories. I mean, some of them involve her being in a love affair with Merlin. And there's a whole bunch of stuff to do with that. And essentially, Morgan ends up being the indirect instrument of Arthur's death.
Ooh.
Though apparently she eventually reconciles with him and retains her original role as being one of the sorceress queens who takes him on his final journey to Avalon. So she varies.
Okay, Richie. Opinions on Madam Mim as an antagonist?
She's funny.
Yeah, she's entertaining, I'll give her that.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say about her other than she's funny, she's entertaining. She's not exactly terrifying, although I think I remember being somewhat scared of her when I was young. But then again, I suppose that was because I was young, so a character like this who was very obviously evil and transformed a lot and was potentially going to kill the hero was kind of terrifying to me.
Yeah.
I feel the need to point out that Madam Mim is voiced by Martha Wentworth, who is the voice of Nanny, Queenie the Cow, and Lucy the Goose in the 101 Dalmatians.
Okay.
But Madam Mim is her final credited film appearance.
Okay, well, go out of her bag, I suppose.
Indeed, I don't think she really appeared. She's appeared in obviously other films, but nothing that we would really recognise.
Kind of like a death march going on.
Well, of course, because they're going to have a duel.
Oh, yeah, that's rad. A wizard's duel.
duels weren't necessarily really a thing in medieval times. I mean, I think they sort of were. It developed out of, well, the formal concept of a duel, which became more of a thing during the Renaissance, developed out of a medieval judicial duel and older pre-Christian practices, such as the Viking Age holmgang. Basically, judicial duels were fought by knights and squires to end various disputes. So I suppose they sort of were there in the medieval period. And now that I think about it, there are a few stories, like something to do with Gawain, I think, or it might be Ivan. Probably Ivan, by Chrétien de Troyes, where he and Gawain get involved in a judicial duel for the honour of some ladies for something or other. But a duel like this is more Renaissance era than anything, because those duels were for justice specifically, whereas they then became to do with honour.
And this is just for, like, showing off, like, who's the best when it comes to magic and whatnot.
And it's quite a nice touch that Madame Mim generally always transforms into predators, whereas Merlin is very much always transforming into prey and trying to outsmart Mim, but she's crazy, so...
Now just gotta wait for him to come down and swallow the prize. But then... who's the predator of the walrus? Pretty sure elephants don't hunt walrusi.
No?
Enjoy the antics, Richard.
Of course I'm enjoying the antics. There's very little else we can do right now.
Not quite Shere Khan, but I'll take it. Now there's a scary cat.
Yeah. Also, notice how when she was as the tiger, she's got the Cheshire Cat colours.
Oh.
So when she was the tiger, sort of looked like the Cheshire Cat a little bit.
I guess Dizzy just loves that colour combo.
I mean, it is a good colour combination, to be fair.
Oh, stop pushing your luck, Merlin. Oh, here it goes. Oh, man, if you can't see what's coming, you kind of deserve this happening to you. You know, Professor McGonagall would really love this part of the movie, considering Transfiguration is her speciality.
Definitely, although I think she would probably just moan about it and just say how terrible Merlin's strategic things were.
Just like ranking him on the different forms and whatnot.
Yeah, like, I think that's the type of thing that she would do. She's like, seriously, you can sort this out.
Am I reading too much into it to think that Madame Mim's dragon form is a reference to Pete's dragon?
I don't... you might be reading a little bit into it, because I don't think Pete's dragon was released until a bit after this one, so... looking at the wrong list, that's always helpful. And there's not on the actual list. But yeah, so I think Pete's Dragon came out in the 70s. Bear with me 1 second. So Pete's Dragon was, I think, 1977.
Okay.
Yes, it was 1977, so it was end of the 70s. But perhaps Pete's Dragon, his design was influenced by Madame Mim.
It's a long shot, but that's all we have right now.
I don't think it is actually a long shot, because the body type is very similar, and the fluffy hair is also quite similar as well.
That got remade recently, did Pete's Dragon, and I
Yes,
heard
it
it
did.
got, like, surprisingly good reviews.
I did as well. I'm intrigued.
I mean, it's always nice when something you think's not going to be all that great comes out and does fairly well. So yeah, for those of you who missed it, Merlin basically won the duel by turning into a disease.
Yes, and Mim can do absolutely nothing to stop it.
I guess she's gonna open up every book she can find in terms of like medicine and just read up on all kinds of viruses and whatnot.
We now get the last 10 minutes of the film, which is basically where everything important happens.
Okay, now the real commentary begins, okay. Now, you've had Christmases before, but none as lavish as a snowy Christmas in a castle. Just look at that spread.
Oh, I know, it's great.
Okay, just in case the audience doesn't know my status, here it is.
He's not going to be so smug for that long.
Oh, spoilers, Rishi. Calm me down.
Tom,
Yes.
we've been talking about King Arthur for the entire
The
film.
whole commentary. Oh, here we go. Chance. Chance it is, boy. It's you. You or nothing. Reused animation and audio there.
Mm-hmm. Also, look at that coat.
That's more of a tunic than a coat, really, but
It is more of a tunic, yeah.
yeah, Archimedes is trying to be polite about pissing Merlin off. What I don't really understand about this sequence is, I'm sure Merlin can see the future, so was he doing this to push Arthur down the path to, like, helping Kay, or was he just properly throwing a hiss at it?
Both?
Question mark?
Because, I mean, the thing is that part of it is probably, yes, he knows exactly what's going to happen, he knows it's all going to be fine, and if he pushes these particular buttons, then Arthur is going to fulfill his destiny. But then he's probably also annoyed because he's just like, for God's sake, I've been teaching you all this bloody time and you're just freaking annoying me. You know what? Sod ya.
Oh, off he goes. Super Merlin Galaxy. Bye-bye. Yeah, just wrap your head around that concept, I guess, and Arthur doesn't even bat an eyelid.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose considering the Higgitus Figgitus Miggitus Mum section, he's seen a lot of shit at this point where he's just like, so you kind of have to just go, right, well, you know what? Just forget about it.
Oh, it's like a Ren fair, but it's legit.
Well, yes, it's a medieval joust.
My money's on gold.
Oh.
Okay, well, it was a draw to begin with. Let's see what happens when they take out the swords. God, you're an awful squire, Wart. Maybe Merlin had a point.
Yeah, he is absolutely useless.
Reused animation. Jesus Christ, it's so blatant. Oh man, I love the backgrounds in this part of the movie.
The innkeeper's gonna be at the tournament.
What the talking bird said.
Exactly. It's like, come on, seriously.
What are the chances that he never heard the story about the Sword and the Stone?
Well, I mean, I suppose if he's been sheltered his entire life, quite reasonable.
Yeah, although there may have been some instances of, like, Hector and Kay sitting around getting a bit tipsy off ale or whatever they drank back then, talking about a famed sword in the stone and the legend of the king.
Yeah. Also, I have to say, I like how it's just so... Arthur and Archimedes are just like, yeah, it's a sword. But then when he's pulling it out, you've got the ha, ha, ha choir going, and the light, and it's just like, wow.
Title drop.
Roll credits.
We don't know who. Let's hold another tournament to find out who pulled it. We laugh at the notion of such a puny one pulling the sword from the stone. Oh, this should be good for a laugh. Fuck the tournament. Who bloody cares?
Also, I like how they've rammed it back in.
Well, I guess that, like, reactivates the magic that keeps the sword in the stone.
I suppose so, yeah.
There you go, confirmation. I won't grab it by, like, the bladed part.
No. It's just like, that's not going to end well for anybody.
I said it, but I said it deeper. Makes it much more meaningful.
Now, apparently that is Sir Bart, who's voiced by, apparently, Phil Ravenscroft.
Okay.
Who did a lot of voiceover work and singing for Disney. So it did stuff in the Haunted Mansion. He's also did the song for the Enchanted Tiki Room. And various other things as well.
Wasn't he Tony the Tiger?
He might very well have been.
I think we talked about this in a future Disneython 2 commentary. Iconic Disney right here. Say what you will about the middle parts of the movie, but like the ending I think is great.
Well, it's iconic.
Oh, he's gonna do it. Begrudgingly, but he's doing it. He'll make a good knight. So, Richie, we're coming to the end of Disney's The Sword and the Stone here. Opinions overall?
It is good, and it's enjoyable. It's not perfect, it's a little bit slow in the middle, not a whole lot happens, but it's an enjoyable watch.
I like the animation, apart from the reuse stuff, which is really blatant, at least, you know, to my adult eyes, as it were. The voice acting is pretty good. The songs, while not particularly catchy, or at least memorable, so they've got that going for them. I would say the entire middle third of the movie is filler. You know, even with all the life lessons from Merlin, basically, like, as soon as he turns into the fish, skip to the Madam Mim fight, you're not really missing much.
Pretty much, yes.
And I would say, in terms of, like, which did the British law movie better, or at least which one was better crafted overall, I'm going to have to give that to Robin Hood.
Oh, definitely.
I like Sword in the Stone. I don't think it would even enter my top 20. So I'll give it I'll put it into the C tier along with Meet the Robinsons. It's good, but it's got pacing issues.
Indeed.
And I fucking love Merlin. Like, in terms of Disney characters, he's definitely up there in the top 20.
Oh, hell yes. Merlin is perfect.
Do you do anything but whine, Arthur?
No.
Show some... Oh god, I think we picked the wrong Arthur. Well, that'd be a plot twist, like in the credits, as like an Avengers stinger. Oh, I'm Arthur Hendragon, actually. Merlin's like, right. Alright, you sit on your fancy chair, you put your fancy hat on, and then you rule England for all the good you'll do. You'll end up taking a mortal blow and going for a nap on some enchanted island somewhere.
Yes, Arthur, king once and king to be.
Indeed. Okay, guys, we hope you have enjoyed our very scattershot commentary of Disney's The Sword in the Stone. But otherwise, we've had a good time. So we'll hopefully see you tomorrow for another second Disneython Com. Bye for now.